Welcome back to part 2 of this 2-part series where we are continuing our journey towards discovering where we want to be emotionally and in the long term. In the last episode, we talked about the importance of having a clear direction and a destination in mind, just like when we take a road trip. It was so interesting to see how many of you wanted to actually see the antique shops as opposed to the bakeries on this road trip and the last Q&A on Spotify. So super cute. But if you missed the previous episode, please go back to last week and start with that episode, as it will make a lot more sense for today's. So we discussed the role of values in guiding our emotional goals as the significance of defining our long-term vision. And the more I read about just the importance of values, the more I want to bring it to conversation, right? But today we're going to dive deeper into practical strategies for setting and achieving the goals that we talked about last week. So without further ado, let's get back onto this emotional highway and pick up some speed as we navigate the road ahead. I'm Chad Lawson, and let's calm it down in 3, 2, 1. So achieving long-term goals is something that many of us aspire to do, right? But sometimes the journey towards our vision can be challenging with numerous obstacles and setbacks along the way. Think about the potholes in the road that just sometimes just kind of send us out of place. It's not uncommon for individuals to become overwhelmed by this enormity of the goals that we put before us, which sometimes then leads to fear. Right? It leads to us being anxious. And ultimately, sometimes these potholes, they make us give up on our dreams. Fortunately, there are some steps that we can use to turn our vision into reality. And in this episode, I want to explore several effective methods for achieving these long-term goals, right? Including chunking. No, this is not a TikTok trend. It's actually a term that we'll talk about in a little bit. But some of these methods being chunking, accountability, celebrating success, embracing failure, and also being flexible. When we adopt these strategies, we can break down our long-term vision, this long-term road trip, and make it more manageable. Right, by following these steps and staying motivated and focusing on our goals. So, first things first, chunking. And no, I don't mean chocolate chip cookies, but it does sound kind of similar. But one of the most critical strategies for achieving long-term goals is by breaking them down into smaller, more manageable steps. Think about a chocolate chip cookie. You wouldn't eat the entire thing all at once. Well, I mean, you can, and it is fun. But if you break it down into smaller, bite-sized portions, right? We often become overwhelmed by the enormity of our goals, right? How big they are and how vast. And the fear of failure stops us from even starting. So chunking our goals, making them small, bite-sized, this makes them less daunting, right? And allows us to create a roadmap towards our vision. So, oddly enough, the concept of chunking, which is just fun to say, was first introduced by a psychologist named George Miller back in the 1950s. This is so fascinating. He suggested that our short-term memory can only hold 7 plus or minus 2 pieces of information at a time. Think about that. 7 things in your mind at once, give or take. But by breaking down our long-term vision into smaller, more bite-sized steps, we can work with the limitations of our short-term memory. And then that will allow us to stay focused on our goals, right? When we do this with our goals, it helps us prioritize our actions, our steps, right? By breaking down our long-term vision into smaller steps, we can identify the most critical actions that will move us closer to where we want to be. Now, this approach allows us to focus our energy and resource on the most important task and avoid wasting time on activities that don't necessarily align with where we're wanting to arrive. That's right. So if you imagine that your vision is a chocolate chip cookie, and if you break it down into, let's say, 4 or 5 bites, right? These smaller little steps will allow us to bring all of this together. Now, another step is accountability. And sometimes that's not always our most favorite word, right? But accountability is a powerful tool that can really help us achieve our goals, right? When we are accountable to someone or even to ourselves, it's a wonderful motivator to keep us on track. We're more likely to follow through with our commitments and take action towards our goals when we know we have someone to report to connect with, and to go back and say, hey, this is what I'm working on, right? Having a supportive mentor or friend to hold us accountable can actually make a significant difference in getting to our long-term destination, emotionally and physically even. And when we share our goals with someone that we trust, we're opening ourselves up to their feedback and even to their guidance. And they can offer insights and perspectives that might be a blind spot to us, which can then help us refine our approach towards our goals. And when we do this, having someone to also celebrate our success with, it's a huge motivator, right? It's almost like they're our cheerleader. We're allowing someone to be a part of what we're trying to do, right? Many hands light the weight. But that also goes with our goals and with our emotions and what we're trying to do in life. And so when we achieve our goals, we want to be able to share our excitement, our joy with someone else, right? Knowing that we have someone who's genuinely happy for us, proud of our achievements. This can be such a validation, right? And it can also keep us energized to keep pushing towards our destination of where we want to be. Maybe we're trying to get through a breakup, or maybe we're trying to get through an addiction of some sorts, right? What is that emotional thing where you want to arrive, knowing that you've tried this many times on your own? And so maybe reaching out to a mentor or to a friend or even professional guidance and saying, hey, you know what, will you help me stay accountable, not only to myself, but can you just be there with me in this? It's a huge motivator, because then you're also feeling like you're not alone. And the wonderful thing about this is the aftermath. When you get to the next step, celebrating success. Celebrating success is a critical component of achieving where we arrive, right? You're so happy when you get there. You're like, yes, all this time, all this energy, all this effort, we did it. And when we set goals, we often focus on the end result, and then we forget to acknowledge the little things that got us there, right? It's just like, what happened from A to B? What are those steps? What are those mile markers that we were able to accomplish, right? If you think about it, celebrating our successes, no matter how small, it's going to help us stay motivated and build momentum to even going further than our original destination, right? Tracking our progress is the first step towards celebrating our success. And when we track our progress, we can see how far we've come and how much closer we are to getting to that destination, to getting to that end result, right? And when we take the time to do this, when we take the time to stop, pull off the highway, stretch our legs, and turn around and see how far we've gone, this helps us stay motivated. It reminds us of the progress that we've made, even if we're not quite where we want to be yet. You're further than when you started. So celebrating our successes, this reinforces our belief in ourselves. When we achieve a goal or make progress towards it, We feel a sense of accomplishment, of pride, of, hey, I did this, no matter how small, right? No matter how small, this can help us believe in ourselves and our ability to achieve where we're wanting to be. And then when we celebrate these little steps, these small wins, this will help build momentum towards where we're trying to go, right? When we achieve a goal or make progress, we feel energized. We feel like, oh my gosh, okay, I did it. This is amazing. So celebrating these successes, I can't stress this enough. It reinforces those positive feelings associated with our progress, right? Which then helps us stay focused, motivated, and on the road. Now, what happens when sometimes we don't push away that plate with cookies on it? Well, embracing failure is also a crucial mindset, right? And it's something that can help us achieve our long-term destination as well. There's so many times that we fear failure, and we see it as a reason to give up on our goals, right? Like, oh, I can't believe I did that. I mean, it's no worth. I just might as well quit. The failure is a natural part of the process. It can provide valuable insight and feedback even that can help us improve our approach towards our goals. Well, how so? Well, when we experience setbacks, when we take that plate of cookies that we're trying to ignore, it's important to see these things as an opportunity to learn, not a chance to grow, right? We can reflect on what went wrong, and then we can identify areas that we need to improve. Well, what went wrong? Well, the plate of cookies was right before me. And what went wrong is I reached for it even though I knew I shouldn't had, right? Or didn't want to. And so when we take the time to stop and reflect, this reflection can be used to adjust our approach and get us closer to achieving what we want to be, where we want to be, how we want to be, right? So instead of that plate of cookies, metaphorically, perhaps we swap that plate of cookies out for something different, maybe some fruit, or maybe we just leave the room and go for a walk, right? But setting setbacks as valuable feedback, this helps us stay motivated, oddly enough. When we see our setbacks as an opportunity, right, a chance to grow, we feel less discouraged when we fail. We're going to fail. This is a part of the process, because if you are not failing, you're not trying, right? But when we feel empowered to keep trying, and then we adjust our approach until we finally achieve the ability to push this plate away, that's success. And failure is it's essential to recognize this, that failure is not a reflection of our worth or ability. Does that make sense? I'm going to say that again. It's so important to recognize that failure is not a reflection of your worth or your ability. Failure is a natural part of the process. It happens to everyone. And when we accept this fact, we can approach failure with a growth mindset and use it as a tool to improve ourselves and our approach towards where we want to be, right? Embracing failure as a natural part of the process is important. It is. It helps us see setbacks as valuable feedback. It makes us stop and ask, okay, what happened? And how do I change this moving forward, right? By shifting our mindset towards failure, we can actually approach our goals with a growth mindset and increase our chances of success. And then flexibility. And no, I don't mean yoga. Being flexible and adaptable, it's the essential skill for achieving where you want to go. Sometimes detours happen, right? Emotionally, physically. And sometimes we just have to take a different path. And that's the only way there. Life is super unpredictable, and sometimes our priorities and our aspirations, they shift along the way. So it's super important to be open to adjusting our goals or changing our approach as needed, right? When we do this, we're able to stay on track, but we have to be open to adjusting our goals or changing our approach. And one of the ways of benefiting this, one of the ways of being flexible, is that it helps us stay motivated, right? When we encounter obstacles, when we have setbacks, it can be so easy to feel discouraged and be like, see, I hit a roadblock. This is not the direction I'm supposed to be taking. But sometimes being flexible, it allows us to adjust our approach and find new ways by detours, by overcoming challenges, right? This can help us stay motivated. This can help us stay focused. This can help us say, hey, you know what? There has to be another way of doing this, right? And when we are flexible, this allows us to take advantage of new opportunities, new destinations even, which will come up along the way. And as we work towards our long-term vision, our long-term destination, we may discover new interest or opportunities that we had never anticipated, right? So being flexible allows us to bring these new opportunities, these new things, these new visions, these new adjustments into our destination. But it's also important to note that being flexible does not mean you're giving up, right? It doesn't mean that you're giving up on your goals or that you're abandoning this destination of where you want to be. Instead, it means being open to the idea of new experiences, of new highways, of new sunsets, of new sunrises, right? It also means having the resilience and being able to adapt to these transitions, to these detours, right? And this is even more beautiful of a way to travel. Think about it. How many times have you been somewhere you've never been before? And you're like, oh my gosh, this place is so amazing. And I want to come back with a friend or with a loved one and share this experience together. But that was only through you being somewhere you had never been before. So be flexible and realize that sometimes obstacles, they're there for a reason. And when we're open to adjusting our approach as needed, this allows us to increase our chances of success, staying focused, and also having some fun along the way. So to wrap this up, I want you to understand this takes time, right? It requires dedication and patience and some perseverance. It's not easy. If it were easy, we wouldn't appreciate it as much. But breaking down our emotional destinations into more manageable steps, when we do this, we can work towards where we want to be without feeling overwhelmed. And additionally, when we hold ourselves accountable, and we celebrate our little wins, those small bites of this big cookie, this allows us to be excited. This motivates us. This gives us a new perspective. And it also makes us realize why we're wanting to be at that place. When we embrace failure, when we are open to being flexible, all of these things help us stay on track. There's so many factors involved. Failure is the natural part, right? Flexibility allows us to adjust. And it's important to remember that when we are going to this destination, that from starting to ending, there's a huge highway from start to finish. And there are so many elements of it, so many parts, to where I want to invite you to enjoy, right? We should embrace challenges. We should learn from our experiences. We should enjoy this emotional ride. And with time, with patience, with some hard work, with some right mindset, with some good friends, with some laughs, with some cries, you're going to make it there. You have the strength, you have the ability to land where you want to emotionally. It doesn't happen overnight. I'll never forget driving through the state of Texas with my dad years ago. It felt like a 3-day drive. And sometimes those experiences, they're not short. They take time, but they're special moments. So the things that I've talked about, you can apply these to a wide range of things. Long-term goals, whether it's setting a new business in place, or learning a new skill, or even running a marathon. Like all of these things, when you stay focused, when you stay motivated, when you never give up on where you are wanting to be emotionally, these things will fall into place. Rome wasn't built in a day. So achieving this destination of where we want to be emotionally and personally, this takes time. But with the right mindset, with the right strategies, I know you're going to arrive. For more episodes, concert dates, or to send me some delicious chocolate chip cookies, visit CalmItDownPodcast.com. This podcast was written and produced by yours truly, Chad Lawson, composer, pianist, and nationally recognized sweet tooth. Now, before we part ways, I want to remind you that the views, expressions, and techniques in this episode are of my personal opinion and not intended to serve as a substitute for medical advice or diagnoses rendered to you by your individual doctor or other healthcare provider. Please seek the advice of a licensed physician or therapist for any medical or emotional concerns. I'm not a licensed therapist or physician, but I am an empath by nature, and I hope this and future podcast episodes can aid your emotional needs. To find a list of licensed professionals in your area, visit CalmItDownPodcast.com. And if you enjoy this podcast and want to support the time, the person involved, and content you hear each week, please consider pitching in $2 or $3 a month. Your contribution will help keep this podcast ad-free. Visit CalmItDownPodcast.com, look for the white coffee cup with the heart in the center, or scan the QR code at the bottom of the page. Again, CalmItDownPodcast.com. Remember, be kind to your mind. And join me next week as we calm it down.